Bon tarde, South Africa. Welcome to Portugal, or at least as close as you're going to get to Portugal in South Africa, because in the heart of Melrose Arch, where I'm standing right now, is one of the most historic institutions of Portuguese celebration in the entire country. Welcome to Dan Really Likes Wine with Norman Goodfellows, and welcome to La Parreirinha. It does take some practice, which, if you know the culinary history of Johannesburg, used to be the Portuguese embassy or thereabouts in the deep south of Johannesburg, set in an old police station. It was a place with a rich history and a very, very dedicated customer base, because the Portuguese food was as all good Portuguese food should be. It was simple and it was fantastic. But it's bye-bye to the south and a move up to Melrose Arch, and that's happened just in the last few years, and the turnaround has led to a brand new generation of fans discovering why it is such a great place to come and sample the food of Portugal. But along with an adventure in Portuguese food and wine, there's another restaurant to look at, as well as a very cool winemaker who I might just be distantly related to. Later on the show, I catch up with Callan Rae Williams, the Garajeest, who's making some terrific wine, not just the Cabernet Franc and the Semillon, for which she's become so well known, but also a couple of new surprises and additions, and she's having a great deal of fun with a brand that is gaining a lot of traction very quickly indeed. But before we do that, it's time to head across Johannesburg, and while I go and have a look through the menu and decide what I'm going to feast on Portuguese style, I'll take you to one of the icons of South African dining. Signature has been going now for a very long time. In fact, they had a rather big anniversary to celebrate recently. To talk you through that anniversary and the brand new wine they've released, a very happy man called Desmond and Signature Restaurant. So normally filming of Dan Really Likes Wine is a pretty relaxed affair. I rock up somewhere cool, drink lots of wine, eat a bit of food and charge it to somebody else before heading off home to sit on my couch for the rest of today. Well, today's not how that happens, because today I'm in the presence, slightly unnervingly, of restaurant royalty and one of the finest sommeliers in the country. This is Signature in Morningside. Now, normally you have to book 3 to 4 years in advance to get in. Thankfully, I was able to sneak in today, and not just as part of the greatest celebrations at Signature, which is now astonishingly 15 years into a wonderful story of restaurant brilliance, but also the celebration of some brand new wine, because Desmond, the genius behind the restaurant, is somebody who's got a delight in wine and has decided it is finally time to try some of his own. And between him and Malisi, we're going to explore some of this wine. But before we do that, gentlemen, welcome to the show. And congratulations, 15 years of Signature. I suspect it's one of those things that feels like both it started yesterday and it's been going forever.
It's precisely exactly that. It's just like it feels like it was just the other day when we opened. And then you just get your head stuck in there, keep grinding, and it's a year or 2, 5, 10, before you know it, it's 15 years. And what a journey it's been. And it's an incredible journey. We've been ever so fortunate to have such a great following of people that literally since day one are still supporting us to this very day. And we had an incredible celebration last week, well received. We are so in trouble because our database is so huge. Even if we had filled the convention center, we still would have left some people out. So
is this your way of explaining why I wasn't invited to your 15th?
In a matter of speaking, in a matter of speaking.
Look, it was a hell of a party, and I think the last 3 people made bail this morning, which is also a sign of a great
Something like
celebration.
that. Something like that.
But I feel like it's been 15 years of celebration, and 15 years that really is an admirable mark, because if you look at the majority of restaurants don't last for 15 years. They come, they rise up, they do really well, and then a chef moves on, an owner sells, and things decide to unravel. Yours hasn't. Is there a secret? Is there a key? What's kept Signature going as long as it has?
I think to a great extent, it's it's the entire value chain being consistent. Being owner-run, I'm pretty much been hands-on and consistent in terms of making sure that the vision continues to be seen through. Suppliers in terms of our very products, the raw products from back of house as well as front of house, it's been exactly the same set of suppliers that we've had. And then most importantly also, the very people that make it work, from the food that's been prepared and the very people that serve and engage with customers, have to a great extent been very, very much the same people for the longest of time. So you can't be consistent when you have an inconsistent, supplier base, inconsistent front of house team, as it were, as it said. So all of that put together, making sure that it's a well trained team for that matter. Because if you're going to come and have a dish today and enjoying it for what it is, you're booking 2 weeks later. You want to have exactly the same dish that you had and enjoy it in the same manner that you did, a couple of weeks before. So, but I think that over and above the fact that we're so personal in terms of how we approach what we do. We know our customers very intimately. Every single person. Somebody said to me the other day, like, you come to Signature, you don't feel like you're a number. You feel like you matter. They know you intimately. They know your name. They know your preferences. They know where you like to sit. They like, where you like to eat, for that matter, etc., etc. And I think all of that, personalizing the experience, adds up to just making people feel like there's something different there.
And
people buy into that.
And that stems from the example you set, but it then has to flow down the food chain, so to speak. And if I think of the few occasions I've been able to get a table here and be persuaded my bank manager to authorise my visit, what's always taken me is the warmth of the welcome that I've had. And that brings me across to you, Molly. So you haven't been here for quite as long, obviously, as Desmond, but you've been here a while now, and I think you've got a real sense of what the magic to Signature is. What's it like being part of this team, part of this Signature family?
Dan, it's actually been exceptional, if I can put it in simply terms. Everything that a Signature does, executes it to the highest level. It's premium. And being part of it actually resonates with what I have come to learn and to do. I'm standing here and looking at what I have achieved. It's actually intertwined with what Signature has taught me and what Signature journey has actually brought me to be where I am. And so it's just a growth. And you're looking at me, I'm just one of the examples of how the team has done exceptionally well. There are so many individuals that have come here just as mere individuals, starting from the base at the bottom. But if you look at where they are now people that can be reckoned with even in this industry. And it has been something exceptionally good to behold, I must say.
Boxes to tick when putting together a great fine dining restaurant. You need some fine dining, first of all. That's quite important. You need a beautifully appointed space, and that you certainly have. Having an always suspiciously youthful-looking, athletic and handsome owner definitely helps. But then you've got...
You're a great man.
But very, very, very objectively, the most important part of any restaurant, of course, would be wine. And Lucy, you and I both definitely agree on that.
Yeah.
When you are in a restaurant like this, there's always a certain expectation, both from sommelier is going to give me something special, but also I'm going to walk away with the wine that I can't always get everywhere, the wine that's got a little bit more age to it. It's a slightly different varietal. It's something special and exceptional. And again, I think that's something that you guys have managed to complete. And for you as a sommelier, Lucy, that must be one of the really cool aspects of working here.
Certainly so. It's been an honor, actually, I must say, to the boss first, because he actually gives me that leeway to play around in terms of the beverages as to what is it that the guests prefer and so forth. And it's something that works, and we believe that we understand the room ever so well. He gave us that right to actually go ahead and go for it.
It's very quick to see on a wine list, right, this has been subsidized by one of the distributors. This hasn't been given much thought. This is let's just throw something together and tick a few boxes. That's obviously not the case here. And for me, that says this is somebody who's got a deep love of wine. Where does that come from? Where does this passion of wine emerge from, Desmond?
I think for us, it's more a case of fine dining as an offering. Goes hand in hand with, you're going to have your food, you're going to have it with wine. And it's something that resonates and goes hand in hand with the offering. People come here for the entire experience, and that experience has to go with what the food is, in terms of how the food has been presented, etc. And with that, it's got to go with some good quality wines. It's a no-brainer. So a great deal of it has to do with that. And then, yes, I do try every single dish. I try, hence the public opinion struggle. And then, obviously, the tasting of the wines when they come through. In over and above even what we have listed. I come across, I see something in my travels. I see, come across a great wine that I think we should have that is, that just stands out and it's unique and it's in terms of how it's being positioned. As a policy, I don't care. let's have it as
Let's
an
get
off the
it in.
list item.
Mm.
So the more we have in terms of what the customers can explore when they walk into our cellars.
He's between us. He's a nightmare, isn't he? I found this new Bulgarian Sauvignon. We
Between
must
us,
have it,
yes,
Maurice.
yes.
Find it now.
I'm always sending you something. Oh, I came across this. Get it. Let's add it onto our list.
Does he
Yes.
buy stuff at wine auctions and then make you sell it at the restaurants?
Certainly so. Certainly so. We're part of the Cape Winemakers Guild for the longest of time, and all these other auctions we partake of.
Well, look, it's a natural lead into what we have here.
Of course.
And this is the wine you've produced. And I have no doubt this is a passion project as much as anything for you, Desmond. But it would have been a difficult one because you know so much about wine. You spend so much time with wine. You know so many winemakers. You'd have had to decide, right, well, which region, what varietals, who's making it for me, who am I going to upset if I don't ask them to make it for me? What was the process and the thinking in terms of what I'm going to make, where it's going to come from, and why it says Desmond and why it says Signature?
Yeah. So for me, again, going back to who we are as Signature, the primary objective is always it's got to be unique. It's got to have a premium angle to it. It's as boutique as possible, and we've spoken to quite a few wineries out there. Obviously, we don't own a wine farm, so we had to collaborate with somebody out there. And I charged Ngolisi and Katie to narrowing down the list of people that we could speak to. And after a thorough exercise, we did a bit of tasting with a couple of people and narrowed it down to Swartland. And a couple of tastings later, it was a winner. It was a no-brainer from the get-go. Like, you know what? This is who we're gonna go with. Some of the wines coming from the Swartland region, one of the best regions out in terms of winemaking in the country. And today's where we are.
How cloak and dagger is this? Are we allowed to know who's made it and exactly where it's from, or is this closely guarded?
Very closely guarded secret, but it comes from the Swartland area. It's a boutique winery coming out of the Swartland area. Guys from Lammerhoek, I'm open to say, and great producers of wine, and we can only be proud to have associated with them. And we have a few other lines that are coming up, and
Yes,
MCC
okay.
before the end of the year is something that's kind of in the works as well.
Mm.
So
you
watch
do
the
realise
space.
this is a rabbit hole. I remember Duncan Savage looking me in the eye and assuring me I will only ever make 2 wines. He's got about 70 now. So yeah, your 20th anniversary. We just
Well, before you know it, it'll be right here.
well, these are the
exciting
starting
times.
ones. Let's try the white first of all. And I think when you're doing something like this, you've got lots of stuff to consider. What is the varietal that speaks to South Africa? What's the varietal that speaks to me? What's the varietal combination that's going to do best justice to the widest variety of food? For me, a white blend, particularly one with a bit of Chenin in, is always a great way to look at it. I don't know if that's what this is, but the nose tells me that there's plenty going on in here. Maurice, what have we got in here? What are we drinking?
The bosses did highlight that you went to Swartland for such a beautiful white blend. And as you would well know, Swartland is well known for Chenin Blanc, first and foremost. And then obviously playing around with other varietals that love so much heat. And I must say that this is a 2020 vintage. And as a 2020 vintage coming in around the drought time, coming in also around the COVID time, it was to be one of the most great vintages that had to be done, because when lockdown, say, just shut everything, the juice for the white was already on the tanks. So they had more time to play around and work with what they had on the tanks at the time. And Chenin did very well. So here we have got a Chenin-based blend, obviously with a Masane that gives it a bit of acidity. And then we also have VNA and Hasvelu, which is something that's coming from the Royal Tokai in Hungary, something which is not well known here in South Africa, and which was one of the things that he had tasked us with, to say, don't just bring anything that everyone else has. So we had to look for something which is out of this world, if I can put it this way. And certainly you would tell on the palate that the VNA and the Hasvelu also play a huge part in terms of the fragrance, that sweet, almost fruity character that also comes in after that. But it is the balance that you need, and it is the acidity that you need. We can drink it now. We have the exact specific number of bottles that we have. But if you can keep this and cellar it, I definitely believe that it will work very well. So,
I would certainly agree. That Chenin base is fabulous. That perfume from the Viognier is a delight. Gone and found something utterly obscure from Hungary. I think there's 100% made up on the west coast. Otherwise, it's so little seen. And then that Marsanne just completing the balance. You've got here, it is drinking beautifully. It's got a little bit of age on it now, which is so important for our white wine. And this, whether it's food with a little bit of spice, food with a bit of richness that needs the acidity cut through it, you've got a really multi-dimensional wine, but still one that, as I'm sure is frequently the case over breakfast, you can just have a bottle of on its own.
Just to get this started. and I must say, I mean, we unveiled this last week, and we've had a few people give it a go, and some of whom we call some great connoisseurs of wine and that come to the room, raving reviews so far. So I think we're off to a good start with our debut wines, indeed.
Well, the key word you mentioned is balance, and that is utterly key to any bottle of wine ever. And the only thing out of balance, I fear, is the numbers, because this is going to disappear very quickly indeed. It's your white offering. What about the red? What was the thought process, Desmond, behind going into a red wine?
So to kick off, we wanted to start with at least a red and a white. The initial plan was to come up with four wines, blend, a red, white blend, a Chardonnay, and I think we had a Syrah as well. But I thought, given time constraints, the 15th anniversary is around the corner. Let's get the first two out, and then we start working on the balance of the rest as the year progresses. And as I said, also with an MCC also coming through. So the red was always, the red and white were the first two that we started to kick off with. And again, I was so impressed with what we came up with. And
the Swartland
drinks
red,
that was so beautiful.
Swartland red, well, you see, we know the elegance of Swartland red is one of those key drivers of the style. What completely unknown Serbian, Peruvian, and Taiwanese grapes did Desmond demand you put in this particular wine?
As long as it's difficult that people can pronounce, go for it. But I must say, we went with the same concept with the white, and then obviously it would have been easier for us to work with the same wine farm. Still in Swartland, for Parreirinha is the area where we actually just focus on, and the grapes actually do have a telling story, because these are some 35 and older, which qualifies to be old vine. According to South African laws. And I must say that being part of the heritage vine, you would know that you're dealing with a bush vine. That's not going to give you 10 punches. It's going to give you 2. And of 2, 1 has to work from there onwards. And it has to be a quality wine. So we worked with the low yields, but high returns in terms of the value and the flavor. And Syrah did very well. I must say, while I was just still smelling, I just got that licorice, which actually hasn't been tasting, which definitely shows something about these wines that we have, the complexity of them.
I'll tell you that Syrah shines through immediately, and it has been the red grape that's got so much positive press around the world out of South Africa of late. And I think if you were to sweep into a village in the Northern Rhone, Desmond, even there I suspect they'd know who you were, but if somehow they didn't, and you presented a glass of this, they might suspect it was local rather than from a little further afield.
Thank you.
Which is a really nice way to do it.
Great compliment.
More like a chateau off the pub.
Look, that's certainly the start, but it's also got that little hint of African sunshine to it that I think just lifts the flavour a little, which is exactly what you want, not just for what you're able to offer. I was about to say your guests. I think most of them are friends, really, who come here, because that's really the feel of Signature. But it's also just a really nice way to lift a glass to yourself of your own wine, 15 years in. Hey, I've done something pretty special, and I'm showing no signs of stopping.
Most certainly. We're only just beginning.
Certainly.
Just getting warmed up.
All right. Well, I'm hoping mid-September next year that you are both going to be here, because that's the next time I was able to get a reservation for the restaurant. At which point, I think the whites
we know a few people that can make things happen a lot quicker. So.
I'll hold you to that. Whenever it is, I'm looking forward to the evolution of these wines. So I think the white in particular is one that over the next 3 to 5 years is going to find even more richness and intensity. And some of the dishes I've had here before are crying out for a partnership. partnership, and the red is going to do likewise, which leads me really just to thank you both. It's been a pleasure spending some time with you and to congratulate you. This is not just a Johannesburg, but a South African icon when it comes to indulging in the very best possible way. And now we've got another couple of layers with which to do that. So cheers to you both. Thanks for the wine. Thanks
Cheers.
for the lovely
Cheers.
restaurant.
Cheers.
And here's to 15 more
Cheers.
years and
15
many
more
more
years
after that.
and counting.
Cheers.
Cheers to that indeed.
So that was Signature and Desmond Mabuza's big celebration. And what a way to celebrate your birthday, a birthday of such consequence, by bringing out some new wine. And what that wine showed out of the SWAT line, not only is Desmond a great restaurateur, but he's also got a deep love of wine, a real understanding of it. And he's come up with some rather special stuff. Now, Signature's a terrific restaurant. I love eating there. It's high dining and fine food and a very grand occasion. But I also feel right at home in this kind of space. Maybe it's because the week in which I met my wife was the Algarve in Portugal, or because, as my wife is Greek, the Mediterranean feel, the approach to food and wine is so similar to Portuguese. Either way, I'm very happy to be back, Gloria.
Thank
you for
you.
having me.
It's a pleasure. Welcome.
And at La Parreirinha, I spent about an hour practicing that. Have I got it roughly right?
You've got it right. You've got it right.
What does that mean?
Little grapevine.
Little grapevine. So very, very apt to be on a wine show.
Correct. And in the original building, we had an indoor grapevine growing in there. And that's where the name came from. And in Portuguese, it's very similar to Afrikaans, where anything that's small has got the inge sound, as in key in Afrikaans. So apple key, and the same with Portuguese. So Parreirinha is small grapevine. Parreira would be a big grapevine.
Now, you talk about the old spot. That's a really important part of your history, because
yes.
yours was a restaurant I'd never been to, but I'd heard so much about, to the extent that I wasn't sure you existed, because it sounded near mythical. This restaurant that may or may not have been in a police station, that made this Portuguese food that people from Portugal flew out to try. It was that
Yes.
good. You're now approaching almost 50 years, but the last year or two have been somewhere very different. Tell me about the history and the move to Melrose Arch.
Well, that was one of the hardest moves to make, because we literally all grew up there, myself included, my brother. Now my son literally grew up there. He'd come from school, do his homework at the restaurant, and from there we go home. So that restaurant means a lot more than what it is. It's just not a restaurant to us. So it was a very hard move, very emotional move. And we also wanted to keep that same authentic old feel. So for us, also the hardest part was finding a place that will fit that type of signature name, And we knew for sure we didn't want to be indoors in a shopping center. So we were looking for something old, something that had a story to itself and everything. And then we found this old lady. And she's been empty for a while, and I think she was waiting for us.
Well, I think you were lucky to find her. She was lucky to find you.
I
Because
think so.
I've eaten here. I was here for Father's Day. We had a wonderful 3-hour sprawling luncheon celebration. And it immediately reminded me of the Greek side of the family that I have married
Yes.
into, where there's just way too much food, but it's so good that you can't possibly stop eating it. And going back to my first trip to Portugal and the visits I've been to that part of the world since, it's that the food is based on simplicity of flavor, but made with such passion and with such sincerity and such authenticity. And that's exactly what I got when I ate it.
No, correct. I mean, my mom's biggest philosophy, she doesn't want anybody to come to a restaurant, have a meal, and then still need to go through a drive-through because they only ate like small little portions, So she makes sure that a meal here will feel like a meal that you're having at home.
Your Portuguese is my Greek mother-in-law. They are the same WhatsApp
They are
group.
the same.
Now, I've asked you for some food and some wine, and they come together, as is so much of the case in the Mediterranean, so naturally. The wine has been poured. I know what it is, and I'm looking forward to trying it, but let's start with the food, because
Yes.
this looks like a classic Portuguese gathering. What have I got here?
So what I've allocated for you is I've got the 12S prawns, which is what we're running on a special now for the month of July. And that all came about, my dad's decided to thank the public for their support throughout the years. He lowers the price on the 3 most popular dishes. So which includes the prawns, the chicken, and then the chinchorro. So that is his way of saying thank you for the support for the 49 years, because not everybody thinks that they can afford to go out and eat at a restaurant. So this way, everybody's allowed the opportunity to come and enjoy themselves at a famous restaurant, but at least be able to eat the prawns.
That is such a wonderful philosophy. It's the one that your guests will love and your dad's accountant will absolutely hate. But it's the kind of philosophy, I'm sure, that's allowed you to last for almost half a century, putting your customers right in front.
Yeah, we'll be 50 next year.
Oh, can't believe it. All right, so I'm going to try them all together in a second. I can see there are the prawns. The peri-peri chicken, that's a bit of a
and these
no-brainer.
are the prawn cakes.
The prawn
Very
cakes.
popular.
All right, so
Very
what I'm going to do,
popular.
I'm going to start
Go
with,
for it.
put all the prawns, put prawn together, grab a bit of chicken as well. Oh, this does look good. But before I try any of them, look at my very delicate technique there. Gloria's looking at me with horror. And before I pop on any of the sauces, I want to try some of the wine. And I've been doing my WSET course and running through it. And the wine of Portugal has historically, I think, for the rest of the world, fitted into two spaces. Either port or table wine that's kind of got a village feel, stuff that's not massively polished. And I remember, and I say this with no pride, the first time I went to Portugal, which was where I met my now wife, and I was trying to be very sophisticated and very cool. And she and all her friends were buying Portuguese wine at €2 a bottle. I was buying 30 and 40 euro bottle Bordeaux and thinking I was enormously cool. And then mine ran out. I tried some of theirs and it was way better.
Way better.
And there is just such a wonderfully rustic charm and such a delight to so much of the Portuguese wine.
See, a lot of the Portuguese wine is dry. It's a white dry, and it's very bubbly. And a lot of the people enjoy that because they feel like it's a very soft, it's not heavy on the alcohol. So it's a light wine. Even now the wine that we were selling during the hat trick, during our July special, it's called hat trick. And they're loving it.
Now there's also the very faintest hint of green to this, and that would link to the name, wouldn't it?
It's like vinho verde. So the vinho verde means wine, green wine.
All right. Well, what I'm going to do, this is my normal approach to food and wine. I'm going to try the wine first, then try the food, then see how they come together.
Go for it.
So this is vinho verde. You can see, even if you look closely at the bubbles, there's always just that little hint of effervescence to vinho verde, and I'm practicing my Portuguese. And I can imagine this on a really hot day in Portugal being glorious, but even on a relatively chilly winter's day in Johannesburg, as the outfits will show, this is still a delight. And when I get there straight away, it's got a beautiful acidity to it, and this is quite rich in one case and slightly spicy in another food. So you want something that's going to cut through its best. All right, I'm going to start with my prawn. I've got two sauces here. I presume one is lemon and one is peri-peri.
So this one is lemon, and that one's got the garlic and the peri-peri.
Oh, glorious, glorious. Do not sit next to me if you're on a plane for next week. Ha. All right, so there we go. What is your favourite Portuguese dish?
You know what? I'm so used to this, but my favorite dish would always be the chicken. I enjoy the chicken, and it's a meal that you can have with your fingers, and you can enjoy it, and you can dip it. I tend to add mushroom sauce over it. So I think after I've been in this restaurant industry for about 30 years.
Oh.
So there are days when I tend to think,
you're not supposed to let people know that you're working in primary school. This is not legal in South Africa. All right, lip smacking stuff. Let's give this a try. I've made the mistake in the past of ordering shellfish on size, thinking, oh, well, it's big, it must be great.
Yeah.
And yet, much like peri-peri chicken, and I remember having brilliant peri-peri chicken on the Algarve, but it was really small, and it just concentrates the flavour, but also gives you so much more of a softness of texture.
So I always recommend to people that the bigger they go, the tougher the meat. So the smaller the prawn, the easier it is to eat. It's juicier, and you can actually even enjoy the shell itself. So it's very nice. I way prefer the smaller prawns for me.
Well, that was a glorious mouthful. Let's see how it goes with the wine. Harmonious. And again, this is not a 7 million rand bottle of wine.
No.
It's blue collar eating, and yet it feels regal doing so. All right, onto the peri-peri chicken. So this is basically if Nando's went to private school, this is what you're going to get. Now, should I be having this on its own, or should I try it with some sauce?
I would try it with sauce if you like.
All right, well, I've tried the lemon. Let's try some of the peri-peri and garlic. You can't see this, but my director, Ronaldo, is Portuguese. He is salivating. And so I'm going to make this shoot go on as long as I possibly can, just to rub it in. All right, but a garlic and peri-peri with the chicken. Those flavors are great, so soft. And what I love about the way you do it, you cut the chicken up quite small.
Yeah.
Because often you get a full chicken or a half chicken, and there is that chunk you meet somewhere along the way
Yes,
that feels
yes.
like it's been brought up in the desert.
Yes.
And this is not that at all.
No. See, we prefer to make it as easy as possible for you to actually just dig in. There are a few customers that will, when they place their orders, they tell us, please don't chop it up. So then we don't. But this is the most popular version of it. People like it. It's easy. You don't have to sit there cutting, chunking through the bone. So it's easier for them to just grab a piece and eat.
I can see why it works. All right, the chicken goes so well with the sauce. Let's try the wine again. And again, there's a robust nature. That wine is more than happy with, well, it's admittedly not a fiery peri-peri sauce.
Yes.
It's there for the flavour,
Yes.
rather than lifting the roof off my
Correct.
mouth.
This is the fiery.
All right, well, we'll try.
Would you like to try?
I'll tell you, let me try the prawn cake, then I'll try that right at
Go
the
for
end.
it.
And
Go
we'll get
for
a
it.
shot of me
The prawn
collapsing
cake
in a
might
heap.
be a bit spicier.
All right, well, let's try that as well. Oh, it looks good, doesn't it? How's that? Haha. And the great thing about Portuguese cooking, it's all 100% calorie free. I have friends who they almost ignore the body of the prawn. They love sucking out the head of the prawn
Yes.
because it's got that viscous richness
Correct.
to it, and that's exactly what sits in that prawn cake.
Yes.
And again, because it's got that creaminess, it's got that lovely yumminess to it, it needs something to cut through it. And voila, we've got exactly that. I am going to try that to finish off.
With pleasure.
But before
This
I do
is
that,
homemade.
Is this homemade?
This
All right.
is ours, yeah.
All right. Well, before on camera you get Dan's final moments before I get hospitalised for attempting Portuguese sauce, I must ask you one question
Go.
because it is such a hallmark of this restaurant. You are currently the custodian of 23% of the world's ties, which
Yes.
sit in the restaurant.
Yes.
Why is that? What is the story of the ties?
My dad was always a suit gentleman. Always wore a suit with a tie. Always. Loved ties. Loved the authenticity of them. You know, and he always used to say that a tie makes a man. You know, and especially back in the years when we were still in the South, Joburg CBD was very corporate. So we used to get a lot of the gentlemen from companies, Transnet, the banks and whatever. And they would walk in and my dad would ask them politely, you know, I love your tie. Don't you want to give me a tie? I love ties. And they started, you know, a lot of them were, you know, they were very happy to leave their tie behind, you know, and we would ask them to leave with their business cards. And then my dad it just became such a thing that the word spread and everybody was just bringing ties to us now. And even here, when there's a few people in the north that hadn't been to us, they've heard the stories, but they haven't been to us. And when we first opened, they all came and they all brought a tie with them. So it added to the story, correct. So for us, it's like an honor because it honors my dad and it honors the name of the restaurant, you know.
Well, I feel a little guilty for not bringing a tie.
It's okay, I'll forgive you this
and
time.
so I shall make the sacrifice of coming back here again.
With pleasure.
To have some food, but also to bring the tie
With
as well.
pleasure, you'll be welcome.
That's if I make it back, because I'm going to try one last little bit of chicken here on camera. I'm going to try another 7 or 8 off camera, but I'm going to try it with this peri-peri sauce. Now, if you watched the Dan Nicholl show over the years, you might remember I spent some time in Mozambique, on a chili farm making my own peri-peri sauce and almost killed myself. So let's see how this one goes. You can see those chili seeds shining through. Here we go. Let me have one last mouthful of sustenance just to protect myself. All right, here we go.
Go for it.
It is definitely a lot noisier than this one, and increasingly so, but beyond the flame and the terror, there is some beautiful flavour in there. And when I get the taste back in my mouth in a month's time, I shall think that. No, it's actually absolutely lovely, as is everything here. And I think it's the combination. It's the fact that I almost feel like I'm in a village taverna, even though I'm sitting in one of the most upmarket shopping malls on the continent. And I think that's a combination of really terrific, authentically Portuguese food but also the most wonderful welcome. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you soon again.
You most certainly will. If you haven't been to La Parreirinha, the little vineyard, the little vine, it is now in Melrose Arch. And as you can see from today, the food's terrific. And there's also some great Portuguese wine, and not just a Vinho Verde. I've had some great reds here as well. And that sense of balance that Portuguese wine gives, and some lovely fruit is going to give you something beautiful to explore. Speaking of beautiful wine to explore, as I polish off this lot, oh, that sauce was good. I'm going to head out and meet the Garajeest. This is Callan Rae Williams, who makes some really cool wine. She's got an absolute fixation with musicians and making great vintages, and she does both of them pretty well. So over the years, we've had the delight of the Garajeest on Dan Really Likes Wine, but it's only ever been online, and this has made the last week one of sleepless nights of excitement and anticipation, because finally my sort of fellow Zimbabwean is joining me on the show. Callan, it's lovely to finally have you on in person.
Thank you for having me.
And we've always had these great conversations, but I've been really excited genuinely about spending some time with you, because whenever you've been on the show, what has absolutely lit the show up is just how absolutely nuts you are about your own wine, about making it, and about this whole story you've created. And the story that we've shared a number of times, whereby really, as both of us, having grown up in Zimbabwe, we shouldn't really be in the wine industry, because Zimbabwean wine is mostly used to clean septic tanks and remove stains from places, with apologies to the Zimbabwean wineries out there. And yet, I found my way into drinking wine, you found your way into making beautiful wine. Is there still a space where you sometimes wake up in the morning, pinch yourself, and go, sure, I'm a winemaker?
It is surreal. It's almost like that imposter syndrome. Like, sure, I'm actually make this, and this is what I do. I do feel very grateful, and it does feel like, it feels surreal.
It's a space that demands passion. You can't be a winemaker without being passionate about it. But I think every winemaker has got that added level, something that feeds into what creates the added energy to be up at 2 a.m. doing punchovers or checking vineyards in the cold winter months. For you, I think there's a few of those, but the one that's always come through so strongly is the music.
Yes.
It's obviously the name of a couple of the key wines, but I also sense it's a big driver. While you're in that process of winemaking, music is along for the ride.
So I have quite a few different muses. I'm very artistic, so I would say music and art do play a role in my wines. And passion, I mean, winemaking, it's not just what you learn in varsity or through experience and the science. It is a huge element of passion and love, and also talent, you know, your nose and your palate. And you have to be dedicated, because it's over the years, you yourself as a winemaker you mature, and you become, well, you hope to become more refined in your winemaking style, and the vintages do as well. So there's a lot of dedication there as well. You've got to just stick it out. It's a tough industry.
And that improvement, that journey, is something you spoke about the last time we were on the
Yes.
show. We both remember your very first Cabernet Franc. Was, I think, a work in progress.
Definitely.
But it gave you that starting point. Right?
Yeah.
Here's where I am. I'm not disappointed, but I know there's scope to improve, and I know there's scope to get to where I'd ideally like to be.
So starting out, I mean, I was 24, so I was very young.
And a year later...
a year later, here I am. And inexperienced. So it was quite a lot to take on as a young woman, and someone who was actually just starting out in the industry. Besides all the red tape, it was, you know, I didn't know at that stage what my style was, and I hadn't worked with these cultivars, and the vineyards were also very new to me. So there was a lot against me in the beginning, and I just went for it. So through the years, I have developed more of a feminine, elegant style. I love cool climate wines, and now I can say I actually have a signature profile, and I have definitely improved from the first vintage. Not to say it was a bad vintage, but now I'm more aware of how to work with my vines and the wine, and I mean, it's a working, a live product. So you never know what to expect in the winery or in the vineyards. So you just have to work with what you have, and you guide it. So it's it's definitely, I think I'm still a working process, and we'll just see how the next vintages improve.
I think every element of the wine world is a sense of evolution. You're growing as a winemaker, your vineyards are growing, your understanding of them is growing.
That's it.
And that's part of the reason why I'm very excited to try the wines that I have before in earlier vintages. But I also get to try some new stuff.
Yes, very excited.
It's something I'm delighted to be trying, because this is a great, we don't do a huge amount of in South Africa, but I think when we do it, we do it really, really well at its best. And this is some Riesling. So first question is, with Semillon Cabernet Franc in the bag, why was Riesling something you felt was a good idea?
So I generally don't have any strategy in terms of sales when I bring out a wine. I choose a cultivar based on what my favorite cultivar is, and I just want to make it the best I can, and the way I would want to drink it and have other people drink it. So that's just always, I mean, it sounds so simplistic, but it really is. That's it. So this is one of my favorite cultivars. In fact, I wanted to make this prior to making the Semillon, and I chose the Semillon grapes over Riesling grapes. But this is just one of my favorite cultivars, and how I've made this is I invested in a beautiful 600-liter amphora, clay amphora, and I basically, this is my amphora series, and every year I will rotate a different cultivar in the amphora, so it is very limited. Once the Riesling is sold out, it's sold out. You can taste it's dry. It's not a sweet Riesling, or off dry, and so the amphora just adds to it's just beautiful. It's mineral, it's delicate, it's a dream. That was my dream, to have this beautiful amphora. I've named her Aphrodite, and no one's allowed near her. No one is allowed near her, and I'll probably be paying her off for the next 20 years, but I have an amphora.
I love how excited you speak about all this. It's so cool to see. And the wine itself, you say it's dry. It is indeed. It is incredibly dry. This is Karoo in the heart of summer dry, but it's got a beautiful linearity, the minerality you speak of as well. You say you've only got enough till it's sold out. I'm giving you about a week at this rate based on this. Really cool edition. Have we named it?
So this is the Amphora series. So it will be a standalone series. So it's not part of my music icon range. Because it's so limited, there's actually less than 80 cases available. And again, every year I will rotate the cultivar in there. So the name is the Amphora series and Weiss Riesling. It is an Elgin Weiss Riesling, and 100% vegan as well.
I tasted that, definitely.
Can you taste?
I felt younger and more virtuous and somewhat more pious just by drinking it.
And I mean, you can see that tint of green in there. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful wine. I'm very pleased with it. I bottled it not so long ago, and it's always nerve-wracking bringing out a new wine. You just never know how it's going to be received or if you'll like it or not. But I'm pleased with it. I'm very happy with it.
It can still uncoil a little. It's still very tight. But
just been bottled.
All right. Well, that's a wine I didn't know, but do now, and very happily so. This one is one I am rather familiar with, both the wine and also because of the very cool story. If there are some Philistines watching the show who don't follow your exploits on a daily basis, as of course I do, give us the name first and a reminder of exactly why.
Okay, so this is my Jim Semillon. It's 100% Semillon. And Jim is inspired by Jim Morrison of The Doors. So I have the Garajeest, initially my muse is music. And I grew up listening to old school rock and roll. So this is one of my favorite icons as a musician. And if you do purchase a bottle, you'll see that I don't actually provide tasting notes. I tongue-in-cheek describe the musician with the wine. So this is a very sultry, sexy, I mean, Jim Morrison, the Lizard King. I mean, can you imagine this wine in leather pants?
Come on, baby,
there we go.
Oh,
and I actually have a YouTube music selection. So if you were wanting to listen and drink one of these wines, you've got my selection there.
So there we go. It's basically got 300 songs from the Doors and 300 songs from Bruce Springsteen. And
There we
that's
go.
in entirety. Semillon has found real favour over the last few years. A lot of winemakers have discovered the potential of expression that
Yes.
Semillon has, and I think this shows the variety of the Semillon, because you get some that they are a little waxier, there's a more depth to it. This is very precise. I love it, and it's another great addition to the what do the musicians call it? Their
Collection,
their catalogue.
their catalogue. There we go.
The Callan catalogue.
That's it.
All right. So you have that love of Jim Morrison. I think he would have liked that particular wine. I think he might have liked this one as well.
I think you would have just downed it.
Out the bottle and then thrown a TV out the window and jumped into a jacuzzi with a few air hostesses. This is different. This is brand new as well. This is your Syrah, is that right?
Yes, this is my Elgin Syrah. So all my wines are 100% varietals. So this is 100% Syrah. And wine of origin Elgin. All my wines are Elgin. I'm just a huge fan of cool climate wines, and I think it just goes well with my profile and style of winemaking as well. Just love the elegance, and I mean, it pairs well with a big steak, but you can drink it at lunchtime, you can chill it. It's just so versatile.
It's also right on trend, at the risk of sounding like a horrible marketeer,
Don't say
with
that
the
word.
stubhells of Syrah that we're seeing a lot more
Yes.
of. That bigger, huge, breaking off the back of the scrum and knocking over a couple of opposition flankers has been set aside, and it's something that's got poise and elegance and delicacy, and I think saying a lot more about the fruit as a result.
Yes. So just very cultivar expressive, terroir driven. Yeah, you can taste that it has gone through mallow, so it's got that like creamy characteristic, and it's also a good summer red. You know, so it's an all.
There is one
Year
thing.
round.
There's one thing missing though, and I think that's right. A name. Now, if this is part of the music series, we're going to jump into
Yes.
Bruce Springsteen in a second. You haven't given this a name. Are you going to reveal what the name is? Do you know?
So
what the
I
name
will.
is?
I do. I'm busy finalizing the label, and I will give you a clue. Female artist,
Female artist.
one of my favorite musicians.
Say, oh, I've got this already. It's Bette Midler, isn't it?
No,
Not Bette Midler.
close but no cigar.
All right.
And she's iconic, a bit witchy.
Very early career Britney Spears.
That's pop.
Cher, perhaps?
I mean, I no. But yeah, give it some thought.
All right.
Part of a very well-known band.
Kind of a very well-known band, so to say. All right, so we're kind of going Diana Ross and the Supremes, or somebody in that direction. Well, you're not saying anything to that, are you? Is this
No.
Diana?
I'm not going to say
We're
a
gonna
word
find
to
out.
anything.
All right, well, we'll have to get you back on the show when you do have a name for it. Whatever
Soon.
name, I think the person has been duly honoured, because, again, as you tend to, this is a delight.
Thank you.
So only thing missing is that name and label. We do know the name and label of wine number 4 of 5, and this is going back to the more established ones I've had before. I used to have quite a bit of this in my cellar, and then my wife discovered it. Now I've got absolutely none of it left. This is a
Well, best
Cabernet
you place
Franc.
an order.
I will indeed. This is Cabernet Franc, a varietal I've been enjoying so much over the last little while, and it's the wine we referenced earlier, where I think of all your wines, this is the one where I've seen you start well, but really ramp things up over the years.
Yeah, so I'm very pleased with the direction I've gone with my Cabernet Franc. This is my favorite cultivar, and at a stage I thought this was my favorite wine. I call this the people's wine, because even if someone doesn't like drinking red, I just always encourage them to taste it, and they love it. So just like Bruce Springsteen, as you know, he's considered the people's musician. He's relatable. I feel like this is a relatable wine. It's very approachable, but it's serious. So so starting from that first vintage, I was picking quite late. On phenols, and it was quite jammy, and the wine has definitely become more refined, as I've become more refined.
This is, for most people, if they'd made this wine as a tribute, it would have been, this is a tribute to Bruce Springsteen, the boss, arguably greatest rock and roller of all time.
Yeah.
Whereas for you, this is tribute to my mate Bruce, because the two of you hung out quite a bit, his restraining order notwithstanding.
That's quite funny. Yeah, so this is, I mean, Bruce Springsteen. I won't go into all the detail as to why I love him, but
You've been to the concerts.
I have.
you've
I've
hung
been.
out, and he knows who you are.
I wish he knew who I was, but he has actually sung a song for me.
I do remember you telling that story.
Yeah, which is my favorite story to tell.
Look, he tells it all the time. In fact, when I had dinner with him, she's got, please, Bruce, can you stop telling the Callan
At
story?
all his concerts, that's how he starts.
Oh dear. All right, let's go one more, and this is another one. You're full of mystery today, aren't you?
I am.
You're refusing to tell me what things are. Other than this is one of just 50 magnums that you have made. It is a large bottle of red wine, and that's where my knowledge ends at the moment.
So, this is part of my signature Magnum series, and I've only brought out a couple in the past. I would wait until the vintage was exceptional, and then I would select a pocket of grapes, and I would keep it a secret. And that also just allowed me more room in terms of my labeling. I can label the bottle however I want, because I don't have to follow the legal label laws if I'm not disclosing the cultivar. So that was the one reason. And then it became this thing where my magnums are a secret. So I don't tell anyone, not even my mom knows. I might have slipped it to my dad, but my mom doesn't know, because she would tell the hairdresser even.
Callan's dad expect a call this afternoon.
So this is one of the last magnums I've actually made, and this is inspired by one of my muses being art. So this is called the Venus Magnum, inspired by Botticelli's Birth of Venus painting.
See, I got that horribly wrong, because I thought next year's one would be the Serena, then it would be the Martina.
Oh, so
then it would
tennis.
Be the Naomi, then the Monica.
Whatever sells, whatever
the
you want it to
Steffi.
be. Customer's always right, whatever you want it to be.
Well, it's Venus de Milo, or it is Venus Williams. It's a work of art either way, and a great
And
tribute.
this was quite a interactive. I wanted it to be an interactive wine. So the way I've labeled it is it's a blank canvas, and you unravel the blank canvas, and the bottle's nude because Venus in the painting is nude, and I incorporate a piece of charcoal so you can actually draw right whilst you're drinking the wine, and it's actually taken off. So people do send me their paintings or their poetry or something, and it's quite lovely to get people to play and be creative and interact.
And you did very kindly ask if there could be a nude of myself on an upcoming Magnum. I was very touched by your request, so we are working on that. It will be magnificent, completely unsellable, and probably.
I don't know. I'm sure I'll sell out within a couple of hours.
Your creativity spends its time in all sorts of places. Before we wrap up, you've got something here in a small bottle. It's not actually a wine, because you've been playing around with some fragrance. And I'm trying to think of all the winemakers I know. There's certainly many who have an aroma of wine to them, often late in the evening, but there's never been an actual fragrance I've met from a winemaker as yet. So tell me about this.
So this was to mark my 10 years as the Garajeest. I wanted to incorporate something else to do with the senses. So senses are so important. They affect most of our emotions, they affect our life, how we're feeling, wine, food, and fragrance. So I spent a while working on this. So this is an eau de parfum, and it's organic, and the oils I bring in from France, Grasse in France, and the name is Restraint, Volume 1. It's a very sensual, earthy, grounded scent. It is unisex, and I'm very, very pleased with it, and it's very popular, and yeah, it's just becoming more popular.
Enlighten me, Miss Ray, if you will. So this is called Restraint. I haven't restraint on my wrists since that party I went to with my graduate in Cape Town, accidentally.
With my grad clip, sure.
That's a really cool illusion. I love it's great as it is, but also just the creativity about it and the fun you've had with it, and the fun you're having with everything, which is really cool.
Thank you.
10 years and more in, you're still clearly enjoying everything so much, and still giving us new experiences, new joy. So
thank you. No, it's good to feel inspired and to inspire. So thank you, and thank you for all your support always.
The only thing we are missing as yet is the name of the mystery wine. As soon as we have it, we will let you know. It is a female superstar singer I still think she'll come back to Bette Midler, but we'll give it time. So my fellow Zimbabwean, so to speak, Callan Rae Williams and the wine of the Garajeest with some new additions to the existing base, the musically inspired Cabernet Franc and Semillon. She's just making some really cool wine and obviously having a great deal of fun doing it. Having a great deal of fun being here at the restaurant. You can see, as mentioned earlier, the ties all over the place. Such a part of the history and the heritage of La Parreirinha, which sits on the base of what is just an absolute fundamental to Portuguese cooking, fundamental I discovered on a holiday to the Algarve going back many years, and that is simple but beautifully produced food. And it sounds a bit hackneyed, a bit cliched, but food made with love, and that's exactly what you will find here. Big thank you to Gloria and the team at La Parreirinha. Do come and pay them a visit. Thanks to Callan Rae and the Garajeest, and to Signature. Happy birthday, congratulations Desmond and team. I'll be back there again soon. That's Dan Really Likes Wine with Norman Goodfellows for this week. I might just go get a little more chicken. Cheers.